Hey everybody, welcome back to Project Overflow.
Hello.
So happy to be here with you again. And we want to follow up actually. We've got some questions that came in after the previous session, previous episode that we have. And the question is, what's the quickest way to pay up loan or debt, right? So what do you think?
Just don't do it. Don't get into debt or take up a loan so you don't have to even pay. Think of paying.
Okay. So that's one way of doing it, right? So that's the advice from Zuan, right? Don't get into debt. That's the first one, right? So don't get into becoming somebody's slave, because we really believe that if you are a debtor to someone, you are somebody's slave, right? So do your best. Okay, if you don't have it, live within your means and don't get into debt, right? But let's look at on the other hand, okay, because I'm sure the person asking is already in debt, and that's why they're asking this question. So how and what do they do now?
I think it's being very clear the importance. This is one of teaching that I learned is instead of thinking how do I get out that, or what's the fastest way to to pay up a debt, it's very difficult to do something if you keep saying, it's basically saying no, I need to pay out the debt, right? But this is something that I learned one of the teachings, a sermon actually. It says that it's better to say yes to something compared to saying no to something. So in order to explain that is why, I think going back to the question, why do you want to pay out this debt? Okay, why is it important for you? I think the question you can actually ask yourself, why is it important for you to become debt free?
Right.
So what are you saying yes to? If you are debt free, so then I can start putting aside money for emergency. Right. So I don't have to face another situation where I need to swipe a credit card to get myself out of that, right? So what are you saying yes to? Are you saying yes to a life that is debt free, or or are you saying no to I just need to pay up my debt? If you get what I'm saying, right?
Yeah. Okay, so my understanding of what you just said is because if the goal is to pay out this debt, then the chances of you getting into the next one is pretty high, right? But if the goal is to live a life that is debt-free, then you can be paying up this debt very quickly and never get back into debt.
Yep.
Is that correct?
Yes, correct. And there's a bigger purpose. Instead of just clearing my credit card debt, there's a bigger purpose of doing it.
Okay. Yeah. So like to build a nest egg, or to have legacy funds and things like that. Okay.
Eventually go into investing, so I have enough money. One day, if I want to start a business, I can without taking out a loan from the bank. Right. So these kind of things, these are the things that we are saying yes to whenever we pay off our debt and stop getting into debt. Yeah.
Okay, so this may sound very counter culture. Okay, so the culture today is you have an idea, you act on it now. If you don't have money, get it from the market, right? So I think we hear a lot of this, but the truth is, be no one's debtor, because you don't want to owe people money, and owing the bank money or whatever reasons, and also to be able to pay up. Let's go back to the question, right? What's the quickest way to pay up a debt or loan? So I want to assume, because I don't have the full situation or the scenario. So if you're asking questions, please write your scenario down, right? So again, you can stay anonymous, but definitely ask your questions. We have a link if you want to stay anonymous and not use your YouTube name or whatever. There's a link where you can actually reach the question and answer section to ask your questions anonymously. And the more details we have, the easier it is for us to look at it and just bounce ideas with you. All right, so do use the link that is in the description below. Okay, let's get back to the question on what's the quickest way. I think one of the, if someone is asking the question, they probably have more than one loan at the moment. Okay, and last episode we talked about credit card debt, and if people in Malaysia anyway, I'm not really certain of the statistics overseas, but I don't think it's very much different. The people will have at least two credit cards, if not three. Okay, so 2 to 3 credit cards, and you have a car loan or 2 car loans and a house loan. If you have all this, how do you get out of that the quickest, right? So most people will go for the most expensive one first.
which is a credit card.
Which is the credit card, right? I would say that, yeah, if your credit card debt, for example, during those days when I was using a credit card, the credit card can have a credit limit of up to 90,000 ringgit, right? So if you talk about a credit card debt, and if that is the most expensive but it's up to the max at 90,000, then it's going to be a very, very long climb.
Yep.
So a way to do this is look for the smallest amount that you're owing. For example, you owe a friend 50 ringgit, you owe your parents 200 ringgit, AKPK 2,000 ringgit, your credit card 4,000 ringgit, and then your car loan 30,000 ringgit, and then your house loan maybe 600,000 ringgit. Let's say, okay, I'm just picking the figure from the sky. So the smallest amount is to pay your friend, right? So it is easy to pay off one creditor at a time. Okay, so pay off one debt at a time. So the smallest one will be the fastest one you can check off your list. Okay, so I'm just providing a method. It's a method that works for me because it encourages me that out of the 6 that the people that I owe money to, 1 is gone, right? So I pay the smallest one first, and you pay the smallest one, let's say it's 50 ringgit, pay that 50 ringgit first, because that one doesn't mean a thing. But if you can forgo 50 ringgit after paying the minimum amount due to the rest, right? And you can pay 50 ringgit off to your friend, that means you don't need that 50 ringgit for expenses.
Yep.
So that 50 ringgit now, since you're paid off person A, you now take that 50 ringgit extra that you were supposed to be paying off your debt, you add it on to the next biggest account. Let's say the next biggest account is your parents. You owe them 2,000 ringgit and you've been paying back 100 ringgit every month. Now every month you're paying 150.
Yeah.
That will cut short the time by at least 30%, right? Because now you're speeding up the process. So a couple of months later, or a few months later, after you've now completed paying off your parents, you can cut that off. In fact, now you can give them some money instead of now owing them money. And now what you have is $150 a month or 150 ringgit a month that you were putting aside anyway because you're going to pay back.
Yep.
Right? You take that and add that on to the next smallest amount, which is your AKPK. Let's say you owe 5,000 ringgit, right? And you're paying maybe 60 ringgit or 80 ringgit. You add, or let's say you were paying 50 ringgit. Now you add 150 to that 50 ringgit. You're paying off 200 ringgit every single month.
Yep.
So then that will now speed up that process. And if you added up those processes, then you get into your car loan. Now you're probably adding on anywhere between 400 to 500 ringgit into the car loan that you're paying, maybe 700 ringgit. Now you pay another 500 ringgit. That will cut short the time of your car loan by almost half.
Yep.
And the bank actually, when you do a full settlement, they would actually deduct some of the interest off the amount for you. And then what do? You take that 700 ringgit plus the 500 ringgit, which is 1,200 ringgit, right? Thereabouts, okay. My mental calculation still works, okay. So you take the 1,200 ringgit that you were paying off anyway, and add it onto your house loan that maybe you're paying 1,500, and you're paying with another 1,200.
Yep.
So you're paying over 3,700, and that's assuming 2 things, okay. Number 1, you don't get back into more debt. You live within that amount, and you're paying off your housing loan. Do you know, compound that over 40 years, you probably cut also half the amount of interest that you need to pay. Okay, so that's a way. That's a debt busting way that if you wanna know more, if you want us to expound more, we could do that. Okay, just give us your scenario and let's look at real figures that we can work with.
Yeah. So this is what we call the snowball effect, right?
That's right.
Like the snowball effect, like from a 50 ringgit clearing that gives you another additional 50 ringgit to clear something else instead of spending.
Yeah.
So I guess the most important thing is actually taking the additional and clearing off another debt.
Yes.
So to have that snowball effect. And in the long run, we definitely will save a lot on interest.
That's right.
Right. So it's very interesting that this approach, because I also have been taught, like logically been taught that to clear off the highest interest rate first.
Yeah.
But looks like this approach it gives that, I can see it gives that the psychological advantage as well, like
That's
something
right.
that we
Strike off
the list instead
so
of
the motivation actually builds up instead of drawing you down, because if you pay the highest interest first, if that amount is considerably high, then you're paying and it doesn't seem to get off your list, okay, and then your motivation actually doesn't go up, okay. So so remember I said there are two things, assuming the two things that happen. Number one is you don't get back into debt, and number two is you don't spend that amount that you have paid off and say, hoo, now I've got extra 50 to spend. No, okay, you allow that to snowball, all right? Because what will happen is, imagine if you snowball and after 10 years, instead of 40 years to pay up your house loan, now you pay over 10 years, you have over 3,200 ringgit that you are putting aside every single month from year 11 to year 40. Do you know how much that will be? You go use a calculator and calculate. Instead of now buying a house, another house, let's say you want to buy a investment property, you don't have to take a loan, because you could literally take that amount that you are now putting aside and purchasing one low cost house that you can own debt free, and you can be earning passive income from that.
Yep.
Right, so that is the debt busting, kind of methodology that I would like to share with you. I didn't come up with that, by the way. I learned it from a guy named Delph DeRoos. Okay, so I want to credit him, and he taught me how to use this methodology, because it works really well, because it works on the psychology. It's not just in your pocket. It's easy to now pinch 50 ringgit off. From your, so for example, let's say it's not 50 ringgit, let's say your lowest one is, let's say 2,000 ringgit, and you're paying 80 ringgit a month. It's easy to now pay an extra 20 ringgit or pay an extra 50 ringgit into that 80 ringgit to speed up that process. Instead of taking 1.5 years to clear your credit card debt, you take now 6 months, and then let that snowball in, because you would have within that 6 months live lower than what you used to spend, right? Because you had to tighten up your belt and take out the excess, which is what you used to spend, to put into your debt busting account. So if you do that diligently, in a disciplined manner, without increasing more debt or chalking up more purchases until you pay this off, then you would see that you would pay off your loan very, very quickly. All right, so I hope that has helped you. If you've got any questions, don't forget to ask those questions in the comment below, or please fill up the link. Okay, it's a Google form. Fill that up and ask us those questions with your particular scenario that we can help you in. And if you like this video, please share it with your friends. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next episode. Thanks again. Bye bye.
See you.